Good evening, everybody. Welcome to another reading of Star Wars Episode 4. It's been a year since I started this, and a year since I last read a chapter. I've been busy reading the Bible and the Quran. So let's get back to Star Wars. We left off on chapter 6, so let's read chapter 7. Chapter 7. Luke and Ben were securing R2D2 in the back of the speeder while 3PO kept a lookout for any additional troops. If Solo's ship is as fast as it's boasting, we should be all right, the old man observed with satisfaction. But 2,000 and 15 more than we reach all right. It's not the 15 that worries me. It's the first two, Kenobi explained. I'm afraid you'll have to sell your speeder. Luke let his gaze rove over the land speeder, but the thrill it had once given him was gone. Gone along with other things best not dwelt on. It's all right, Luke assured Kenobi listlessly. I don't think I'll need it again. From their vantage point in another booth, Solo and Chewbacca watched as the Imperials strode through the bar. Two of them gave the Corellian a lingering glance. Chewbacca growled once, and the two soldiers hurried their pace on. Solo grinned sardonically, turning to his partner. Chewie, this charter could save our backs. 17,000. He shook his head in amazement. Those two must really be desperate. I wonder what they've wanted for. But I agreed, no questions. They're paying enough for us. Let's get going. The Falcon won't check itself out. Going somewhere, Solo? The Corellian couldn't identify the voice, coming as it did through an electronics translator. But there was no problem recognizing the speaker or the gun it held, stuck in Solo's side. The creature was roughly man-sized and bipedal, but his head was something out of a delirium by way of an upset stomach. It had huge, dull-faceted eyes, bulbous on the pea-green face. On a pea-green face, a ridge of short spines crested the high skull, while nostrils and mouth contained a tapir-like snout. As a matter of fact, Solo replied slowly, I was just on my way to see your boss. You can tell Jabba I've got the money I owe. That's what you said yesterday, and last week, and the week prior to that. It's too late, Solo. I'm not going to back to Jabba with another one of your stories. But I've got the money this time, Solo protested. Fine, I'll take it now, please. Solo sat down slowly. Jabba's minions were apt to be cursed with nervous trigger fingers. The alien took the seat across from the muzzle of the ugly little pistol never strained from Solo's chest. I haven't got it here with me. Tell Jabba. It's too late, I think. Jabba would rather have you serve. Huh. Over my dead body, Solo said, unamiably. The alien was not impressed. If you insist, will you come outside with me, or must I finish it here? I don't think they'd like another killing, Solo pointed out. Something which might have been a laugh came from the creature's translator. That's hardly noticed. They'd hardly notice. Get up, Solo. I've been looking forward to this for a long time. You've embarrassed me in front of Jabba with pious excuses for the last time. I think you're right. The light and noise filled the little corner of the cantina, and when it had faded, all that remained was unctuous alien the unctuous alien with a smoking, slimy spot on the stone floor. Solo brought brought his hand in the smoking weapon it held from beneath the table, drawing bemused stares from several of the canteen's patrons, and clucking sounds from its more knowledgeable ones. They have they had known the creature had committed its fatal mistake in allowing Solo the chance to get his hands under cover. It'll take a lot more than the likes of you to finish me off. Jabba the Hutt always did skimp when it came to hiring his hands. Leaving the booth, Solo flipped the bartender a handful of coins as he and Chewbacca moved off. Sorry for the mess. I always was a rotten host. Okay, let me stop there. We know that that alien is Greedo. Moving on. Heavily armed troopers hurry down the narrow alleyway, glowering from time to time at the darkly clad beings who hawked exotic goods from dingy little stalls. Here in Mos Eisley's inner regions, the walls were high and narrow, turning the passageway into a tunnel. No one stared angrily back at them. No one shouted imprecations or mouthed obscenities. These armored figures moved with the authority of the Empire, their sidearms boldly displayed and activated. All around, men, not men, and mechanicals were crouched in waste-littered doorways. Among accumulations of garbage and filth, they exchanged information and concluded transactions of dubious legality. A hot wind moaned down the alleyway, and the troopers closed their formation. Their precision and order masked a fear of such claustrophobic quarters. One paused to check a door, only to discover it tightly locked and bolted. A sand-encrusted human shambling nearby visited a half-mad harangue on the trooper. Shrugging inwardly, the soldier gave the crazy human a sour eye before moving on down the alley to join up again with his fellows. As soon as they were all well past, the door slid open a crack and the metallic face peered out. Below 3PO's leg, a squat barrel shape struggled for view. I would rather have gone with Master Luke than stay here with you. Still, orders are orders. I don't quite know what all the trouble is about, but I'm sure it must be your fault. R2 responded with a near impossibility. A sniggering beep. You watch your language, the taller machine warned. The number of old land speeders and other powered transports in the dusty lot, which were still capable of motion, could be counted on the fingers of one hand. But that was not the concern of Luke and Ben, as they stood bargaining with the tall, slightly insectoid owner. They were here not to buy, but to sell. None of the passers-by favored the hagglers with so much as a curious glance. Similar transactions, which were the business of no one but the transactors, took place half a thousand times daily in Mos Eisley. Eventually, there were no more pleas or threats to be exchanged. As though doling out vials of his own blood, the owner finalized the sale by passing a number of small metal shapes to Luke. Luke and the insectoid traded formal goodbyes, and then they parted, each convinced he had gotten the better of the deal. He says it's the best he can do. Since the XP-38 came out, they just aren't in demand anymore. Luke sighed. Don't look so discouraged. Obi-Wan chided him. What you've obtained will be sufficient. I have enough to cover the rest. Leaving the main street, they turned down an alleyway and walked past a small robot herding along a clutch of creatures resembling attenuated anteaters. As they rounded the corner, Luke strained for a forlorn glimpse of the old land speeder, his last link with his former life. Then there was no more time for looking back. Something short and dark that might have been human underneath all its wrappings stepped out of the shadows as it moved away from the corner. It continued staring after them as they disappeared down the bend in the walkway. That alien, if you can picture him in your mind. I just found this out not too long ago, just before July 4th. I believe it was July 1st or 2nd, where that particular gentleman, that particular alien, was actually played by the late John Wayne. John Wayne played that alien with the long gray nose. I didn't know that until I saw a happy birthday notice on Facebook, and I saw the creature, and then right next to it was a picture of John Wayne. That's pretty cool. Didn't know that. Okay, moving on. The docking bay entrance to the small saucer-shaped spacecraft was completely ringed by half a dozen men and aliens, of which the former were by half the most grotesque. A great mobile tub of muscle and suet, topped by a shaggy, scarred skull, surveyed the semicircle of the armed assassins with satisfaction. Moving forward from the center of the crescent, he shouted toward the ship, "Come on out, Solo. We've got you surrounded." "If so, you're facing the wrong way," came a calm voice. Jabba the Hutt jumped, in itself a remarkable sight. His lackeys likewise whirled to see Han Solo and Chewbacca standing behind him. "You see, I've been waiting for you, Jabba." "I expected you would be," the Hutt admitted, at once pleased and alarmed by the fact that neither Solo nor the big Wookiee appeared to be armed. "I'm not the type to run," Solo said. "Run? Run from what?" Jabba countered. The absence of visible weapons bothered Jabba more than he cared to admit to himself. There was something peculiar here, and it would be better to make no hasty moves until he discovered what was amiss. "Han, my boy, my Pookie, there are times when you disappoint me. I merely wish to know why you haven't paid me, as you should have long ago. And why did you have to fry old poor Greedo like that? After all you and I have been through together. After all you and I have been through together." Solo grinned tightly. "Shove it, Jabba. There isn't enough sentiment in your body to warm an orphan bacteria. As for Greedo, he's sentimental." "Why, Han?" Jabba protested in surprise. "Why would I do that? You're the best smuggler in the business. You're too valuable to fry. Greedo was only relying on my natural concern at your delays. Greedo was only relaying my natural concern for your delays. He wasn't going to kill you. I think he thought he was. Next time, don't send one of these hired twerps. If you got something to say, you come to me yourself." Jabba shook his head and his jowls shook. Lazy, fleshy echoes of his mock sorrow. Han, Han. If only you hadn't had to dump that shipment of spice. You understand. I just can't make an exception. Where would I be if every pilot who smuggled for me dumped his shipment at the first sign of an imperious warship, and then simply showed empty pockets when I demanded recompense? It's not good business. I can be generous and forgiving, but not to the point of bankruptcy. You know, even the eye get bored sometimes, Jabba. Did you think I dumped that spice because I got tired of its smell? I wanted to deliver as much as you wanted to receive it. I had no choice. Again, the sardonic smile. As you say, I'm too valuable to fry. But I've got a charter now. I can pay you back plus a little extra. I just need some more time. I can give you 1,000 on account and the rest in 3 weeks. The gross form seemed to consider, then directed his next words not to Solo, but to his hirelings. Put your blasters away. His gaze and the predatory smile turned to the wary Corellian. Han, my boy, I'm only doing this because you're the best, and I'll need you again sometime. So out of the greatness of my soul and the forgiving heart, and for an extra, say, 20%, I'll give you a little more time. The voice nearly cracked with restraint. But this is the last time. If you disappoint me, if you trample my generosity in your mocking laughter, I'll put a price on your head so large you won't be able to get in your civilized system for the rest of your life, because on every one your name and face will be known to men who will gladly cut your guts out for 1/10 of what I promised. I'm glad we both have our best interests at heart. replied Solo pleasantly, as he and Chewbacca started past the starving arrows of the Hutt's iron guns. Don't worry, Jabba, I'll pay. But not because you threatened me. I'll pay you because it's my pleasure. They're starting to search the spaceport central, the commander declared, having to alternatively run a couple of steps and then walk to keep pace with the long strides of Darth Vader. The Dark Lord was deep in thought as he strolled down one of the battle station's main corridors, trailed by several aides. The reports are just starting to come in. The commander went on. It's only a matter of time before we have the destroyers. Send in more men if you have to. Never mind the protests of the planetary governor. I must have those droids. It's her hope of that data being used against us that is the pillar of her resistance to the mind probes. I understand, Peter. Until then, we must waste our time with Governor Tarkin's foolish plan to break her. There's Docking Bay 94. There's Docking Bay 94. Luke told Kenobi and the robots who had rejoined him. And there's Chewbacca. He seems excited about something. Indeed, the big Wookiee was waving over the heads of the crowd and jabbering loudly in their direction. Speeding their pace, none of the foursome noticed a small, dark-clad thing that had followed them from the transporter lot. The creature moved into the doorway and pulled a tiny transmitter from a pouch concealed in his multifold robes. The transmitter looked far too new and modern to be in the grasp of so decrepit a specimen, yet its manipulator was speaking into it with steady assurance. Docking Bay 94, Luke noted, was no different in appearance from a host of other grandiosely named docking bays scattered throughout Mos Eisley. It consisted mostly of an entrance rampway and an enormous pit gouged from the rocky soil. This served as clearance radii from the effects of the simple anti-grav drive, which boosted all spacecraft clear of the gravitational field of the planet. The mathematics of space drive were simple enough to even to Luke. Anti-grav could operate only when there was sufficient gravity well to push against, like that of a planet. Whereas supralight travel could only take place when the ship was clear of that same gravity. Hence, the necessity for the dual drive system on any extra system craft. The pit which formed Docking Bay 94 was as shabbily cut and run down as the majority on Mos Eisley. Its sloping sides were crumbling in places instead of being smoothly fashioned as they were on more populous worlds. Luke felt it formed the perfect setting for the spacecraft Chewbacca was leading toward. That battered ellipsoid, which could only loosely be labeled a ship, appeared to have been pieced together out of old whole fragments and components discarded as unusable by other craft. The wonder of it, Luke mused, was that the thing actually held its shape. Trying to picture the vehicle as spaceworthy would have caused him to collapse in hysteria, were the situation not so serious. But to think of traveling to Alderac in this pathetic, what a piece of junk, he finally murmured, unable to hide his feelings any longer. They were walking up the rampway toward the open door. This thing couldn't possibly make it into hyperspace. Kenobi didn't comment, but merely gestured toward the port, where a figure was coming to meet them. Either Solo had supernaturally acute hearing, or else he was used to the reaction of the sight of the Millennium Falcon produced in prospective passengers. She may not look like much, he confessed as he approached them, but she's all go. I've had a few unique modifications to her myself. In addition to piloting, I like to tinker. She'll make 0.5 factors pass beyond light speed. Luke scratched his head as he tried to reassess the craft in view of its owner's claims. Either the Corellian was the biggest liar this side of the galactic center, or there was more to this vessel than met the eye. Luke thought back once more to old Ben's admonition, never to trust surface impressions and decided to reserve judgment on the ship and its pilot until after he had watched them in operation. Chewbacca had lingered behind at the Docking Bay entrance. Now he rushed up the ramp, a hairy road, and blabbered excitedly at Solo. The pilot regarded him coolly, nodding from time to time, then barked a brief reply. The Wookiee charged into the ship, pausing only to urge everyone to follow. We seem to be a bit rushed. Solo explained cryptically. So if you'll hurry on board, we'll be off. Luke was about to venture some questions, but Kenobi was already prodding him up the ramp. The droids followed. Inside, Luke was slightly startled to see the bulky Chewbacca squirm and fight his way into a pilot's chair, which, despite modifications, was still overwhelmed by his massive form. The Wookiee flipped several tiny switches with digits seemingly too big for the task. Those great paws drifted with surprising grace over the controls. A deep throbbing started somewhere within the ship as the engines were activated. Luke and Ben began strapping themselves into the vacant seats in the main passageway. Outside the docking bay entrance, a long leathery snout protruded from dark fold to the cloth, and somewhere in the depths to either side of that imposing proboscis, eyes stared intently. They turned, along with the rest of the head, as a squad of 8 Imperial troops rushed up. Perhaps not surprisingly, they headed straight for the enigmatic figure, who whispered something to the lead trooper and gestured to the docking bay. The information must have been provocative, activating the weapons and raising them to firing position. The troops charged en masse down the docking bay entrance. A glint of light on moving metal caught Solo's eyes as the unwelcome outlines of the first troops showed themselves. Solo thought it unlikely they would pause to engage in casual conversation. His suspicions were confirmed before he could open his mouth to protest their intrusion, as several dropped to their knees and opened fire on him. Solo ducked back inside, turning to yell forward. Chewie, deflector shields, quick, get us out of here. A throaty roar of acknowledgement came back to him. Drawing his own pistol, Solo managed to snap off a couple of bursts on the comparative safety of the hatch. Seeing that their quarry was neither helpless nor comatose, the exposed troops dove for cover. The low throbbing rose to a whine, then to a deafening howl, as Solo's hand came down on a quick release button. Immediately, the overhead hatch door slammed shut. As the retreating troops raced out of the docking bay entrance, the ground was trembling steadily. They ran smack into the second squad, which had just arrived in response to the rapidly spreading emergency call. One of the soldiers, gesticulating wildly, tried to explain to the newly arrived ranking officer what had happened back in the bay. As soon as the panting officer had finished, the officer whipped out a compact communicator and shouted into it. Flight tech, they're trying to escape. Send everything you've got after that ship. All across Mos Eisley, alarms began to sound, spreading out from the docking bay 94 to concentric circles of concern. Several soldiers scouring one alleyway reacted to the citywide alarm at the same time as saw the small freighter lift gracefully into the clear blue sky above Mos Eisley. It shrank to a pinpoint before any of them thought to bring a weapon to bear. Luke and Ben were already undoing their acceleration straps as Solo walked past them, moving toward the cockpit into the easy, loose-limbed stride of the experienced spacer. Once forward, he fell rather than sat in the pilot's seat and immediately began checking readouts and pages. In the seat next to him, Chewbacca was growling and grunting like a poorly tuned speeder engine. He turned from studying his own instruments, long enough to jab a massive finger at the tracking screen. Solo gave it a quick glance, then turned irritably to his own panel. I know. Looks like 2, maybe 3 destroyers. Somebody certainly dislikes our passengers. Sure picked ourselves a hot one this time. Try to hold him off somehow until I can finish programming for the supper light jump. Angle to the deflectors for maximum shoot. With those instructions, he ceased conversing with a huge Wookiee as his hands flew over the computer input terminals. Solo did not even turn around when a small cylindrical shape appeared in the doorway behind him. R2-D2 beat a few remarks, then scurried away. Rear scanners showed the baleful lemon eye of Tatooine shrinking rapidly behind. It wasn't rapid enough to eliminate the 3 points. Luke and Ben had already this guy. Okay, here we go. Sorry. With those instructions, he ceased conversing with a huge Wookiee as his hands flew over the computer input terminals. Solo did not even turn around when the small cylindrical shape appeared in the doorway behind him. R2-D2 beat a few remarks and scurried away. Okay. Rear scanner showed the baleful lemon eye of Tatooine shrinking rapidly behind him. It wasn't rapid enough to eliminate the 3 points of light that indicated the presence of the pursuing Imperial warships. Although Solo had ignored R2, he turned to acknowledge the entrance of his human passengers. We got 2 more coming in from different angles, he told them, scrutinizing the remorseless instrumentation. They're going to try to box up before we can jump. 5 sheds. What did you 2 do to attract that kind of company? Can you outrun them? Luke asked sarcastically, ignoring the pilot's question. I thought you said this thing was fast. Watch your mouth, kid, or you'll be floating yourself home. There are too many of them, for one thing. But we would say once we made the jump into hyperspace. He grinned knowingly. Can't nobody track another ship accurately at supper-like speeds. Plus, I know a few tricks I ought to lose in any persistent stick tights, of which I've known you boys were so popular. Why? Luke said, challenged. Would you refuse to take us? Not necessarily, the Corellian replied, refusing to be baited. But I sure as hell wouldn't have boosted your fare. I sure as hell would have boosted your fare. Luke had a retort poised on his lips. It was wiped out as he threw up his arms to ward off a brilliant red flash which gave black space outside the viewport the temporary aspect of the surface of the sun. Kenobi, Solo, and even Chewbacca did likewise, since the proximity of the explosion nearly overrode the phototropic achievement. Is where the situation gets interesting, Solo muttered. How long before you can make the jump? Kenobi inquired easily, apparently unconcerned that at any second they all might cease to exist. We're still within the gravitational influence of Tatooine, came the cool response. There will be a few minutes yet before the navigation can compensate and effect an accurate jump. I could override its decision, but the hyperdrive will likely shred itself. That would give me a nice hold full of scrap metal. Excuse me, in addition to you four. A few minutes. A few minutes, Luke blurted, staring at the screens. At the rate they're gaining, traveling through hyperspace is like dust and crops. Ever try calculating a hyperspace jump? Luke had to shake his head. It's no mean trick. Be nice if we rushed in and passed right through SAR or some other friendly space phenom like a black hole. That went in a trip real quick. Fresh explosions continued to flare up, continue to flare close by, despite Chewbacca's best efforts at evasion. On Solo's console, a red warning light began to flash at 410. What's that? Luke wondered nervously. We're losing a deflector shield. Solo informed him with the air of a man about to have a tooth pulled. Better strap yourselves back in. We're almost ready to make the jump. It could get bad if we take a near burst at the Federation. Excuse me. We're almost ready to make the jump. It could get bad if we take a near burst at the wrong moment. Back in the main hold area, 3PO was already locked tightly into his seat by a metal arm stronger than any exploration straps. R2 swayed back and forth under the concussion produced by increasingly powerful energy bursts against the ship's deflectors. What's this really trip? What's the trip really necessary? The tall robot muttered in desperation. I'd forgotten how much I hate space travel. He broke off as Luke and Ben appeared and began strapping themselves back into the chairs. Oddly, Luke was thinking of a dog he had once owned, when an immensely powerful something wretched at the ship's hull with the strength of a fallen angel. Admiral Motti entered the quiet conference, his face streaked with a linear lights lining the walls. His gaze went to the spot where Governor Tarkin stood before the carved view screen, and he bowed slightly. Despite the evidence of the small green gem of a world entered in the screen, where was I? Despite the evidence of a small green gem of a world entered in the screen, he formally announced, "We have entered the Alderaan system. We await your order." The door signaled, and Tarkin made a falsely gentle gesture to the Admiral. "Wait a moment yet, Motti." The door slid aside, and Leia Organa entered, flanked by 2 guards, followed by Darth Vader. I know who you are," she spat. "Governor Tarkin. I should have expected to find you holding Vader's leash. I thought I recognized your unique stench when I was brought on board. Charming to the last," Tarkin declared, in a fashion which suggested his setting. Okay. Charming to the last, Tarkin declared in a fashion which suggested he was anything but charmed. "You don't know how hard I found it to sign your orders for your termination." His expression changed to one of mock sorrow. "Of course, if you have cooperated with the investigation, things might be otherwise. Lord Vader has informed me that your resistance toward traditional methods of inquiry torture." Leia countered the bogus sugar. "Let's not bandy semantics." Tarkin smiled. "I'm surprised you had the courage to take the responsibility for issuing the order on yourself." Tarkin sighed reluctantly. "I'm a dedicated man, and the pleasures are reserved for myself. One of them is that before your execution, I shall like you to be my guest at a small ceremony. It will certify this battle station's operational status, while at the same time ushering in a new era of Imperial technical supremacy. This station is a final link in the new forged Imperial chain, which will bind the million systems of the Galactic Empire together once and for all. Your petty alliance will no longer be with concern. Let's see. Your petty alliance will no longer be of any concern to us. After today's demonstration, no one will dare to oppose Imperial decree, not even the Senate. Organa looked at him with contempt. Force will not keep the Empire away. forces never kept anything together for a long time. For very long. The more you tighten your grip, target, the more systems will slip through your fingers. You're a foolish man, Governor. Foolish men often choke to death of their own delusions. Tarkin smiled. Tarkin smiled at the death head's smiled, death head smile. His face of parchment skulls. It will be interesting to see what manner of passing Lord Vader has in mind for you. I am certain it will be a worthy of you and of you. But before you leave us, we must demonstrate the power of the station once and for all in a conclusive fashion. In a way, you have determined the choice of the subject was demonstrated. Whoa. Blah, 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 blah. In a conclusive fashion. In a way, you've determined the choice of subject for this demonstration. Since you have proven reluctant to supply us with the location of the rebel stronghold, I have deemed it appropriate to select as an alternate subject of your home planet of Alderaan. No, you can't. Alderaan is a peaceful world with no standing armies. You can't. You would prefer another target, a military target, perhaps? We'll agree. Name the system. Tarkin shrugged elaborately. I grow tired of such games. For the last time, where is the rebel base? A voice announced over a hidden speaker that they had approached with an anti-grav range of Alderaan, approximately 6 planetary diameters. That was enough to accomplish what all of Vader's infernal devices had failed to do. Dantooine, Leia whispered, staring at the deck. All pretense of defiance gone. Darn Dantooine. Tarkin let out a slow sigh of satisfaction, then cursed to the black figure nearby. There, you see, Lord Vader? She can be reasonable. One need only frame the question properly to elicit a desired response. He directed his attention to the other officers. After concluding our little test here, we shall make haste to move on to Dantooine. You may proceed with the operation, gentlemen. It took several seconds for Tarkin's words so casually uttered to Patrick. What? Organa finally gasped. Dantooine is too far from the centers of Imperial population. So, as such, subject too far from the centers of Imperial population to serve as a subject of an effective demonstration. You will understand the full reports of our power to spread rapidly to the Empire. We require an obstreperous world more centrally located. Have no fear, though. We will deal with your rebel friend on that as soon as possible. But you said the only words which have meaning are the last ones spoken. Tarkin declared credibly. We will proceed with the destruction of Alderaan as planned. Then you will enjoy watching with us as we obliterate the Dantooine center of this stupid and futile rebellion. He gestured to the two soldiers flanking her. Escort her to the principal observation level and make certain she is provided with unobstructed view. So that's chapter 7 of Star Wars: A New Hope.